we'll be back from the break, and thank you for sticking around to Smart Means Business. Hope you're doing great. It is still a cold morning, but there are quite many chances for you to invest in bonds and securities by using the Zabo platform. The MTN subscribers, you can use the USSD code *292# and you follow the prompts, but do remember to first register and get yourself an account by using your NIN. And in the next 24 hours, you will be able to invest in those bonds and securities. Markets do open daily from 8:15 a.m. and close at 3:15 p.m. That is East African Standard Time. You can choose bonds of any longevity that you would desire to invest in, and you can invest with as low as 15,000, which is the minimum amount of investment. Okay, now with our topic of discussion this morning, we're going to be looking at the issues of operational guidelines for self-help groups, that is by the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, that have been set in place. And to discuss more about this particular one, I do have the head legal from the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, that is Birungi Gloria, who is going to be taking us through all of this. Good morning and many thanks for joining us. Morning.
Morning.
All right. I hope the morning is not too cold on your side.
It's extremely cold.
Okay. And if you can briefly take us through a background of the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority.
All right. Just a small correction. My name is Sheila Birungi, and
okay.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh.
Well, briefly about Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority. This is an agency of government, and it is established by the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Moneylenders Act under Section 6, with a mandate to license, regulate and supervise Tier 4 microfinance institutions. And when we talk about Tier 4 microfinance institutions, we mean one, SACCOs, we mean non-deposit taking microfinance institutions, we mean self-help groups, commodity-based microfinance institutions, and also the money lenders. Probably I can tell our viewers what is Tier 4? Uganda's economy, or the financial sector, is divided into tiers, 4 tiers.
Yes.
So Tier 3 is basically made up of microfinance deposit-taking institutions. Tier 2 has the banks like Post Bank, and Tier 1 has the commercial banks. You know, the Stanbic and Stanchart and the like. And these are licensed and regulated by Bank of Uganda. So the government thought it wise to create a 4th tier for the informal, what we call the informal sector, where there is money lending, you know. It is more of a cash economy. So under the 4th tier is where we have the non-deposit taking microfinance institutions that I mentioned earlier. These are institutions that do not keep savings or take deposits from the public. And then the money lenders, the self-help groups, commodity-based, and the SACCOs that I mentioned. It's basically that.
All right. And mentioning of self-helping groups, which are these ones, self-help groups?
Well, we have several types of self-help groups. We have the Village Savings and Loans Associations, which are the VISLAs. Have you heard of the VISLAs?
No,
do you belong to any?
No, I don't.
We have the SILK, which is the Savings and International Lending Associations. Basically, a VISLA is similar to a SILK. But what differentiates them is that, yes, a VISLA does saving and lending. But when it comes to record keeping, a VISLA uses passbooks. You know, have you seen ladies, our mothers, our grandmothers and aunties somewhere? They have groups where they belong, and they're usually given books to track
their records.
So usually that is called, and that saving system is called a VISLA. And then the silk uses ledgers. These are a bit more developed. So we have the ROSCAs, those are the rotating savings and loans associations. The best example I can give is the Nigina.
Okay.
All these groups whereby you accumulate your savings, and every week or every month there is somebody getting the savings. You've heard of those ones. And then we have the farmer field schools.
And what would those particular ones?
Basically, farmer field schools, farmers come together to find solutions to something like pest control, but in the process they are saving and they are lending each other. And then we have the ASCAs, accumulated savings and loans associations. These ones, instead of rotating the savings, whereby each member of a group has a day or a week or a month when they get their savings, these ones accumulate their savings. They agree that maybe we are going to save for a full year or 2 years, and after the savings, we can start lending to each other.
Okay.
So those are the types of self-help groups that we have.
All right. Now, I do understand you as the regulator are issuing guidelines. But one may ask, why then does the regulator have to issue these guidelines? What are you aiming at?
Well, there haven't been any standards. Truthfully speaking, people have been coming together without any form of standardization. Each group operates in a manner that they want to. So we are trying to create what we call minimal operational standards, you know, a little bit of uniformity that will enable government to track the progress of these groups. That is one of them. Then secondly, we want to build confidence in this sector, the self-help group section of the sector. Why? We've had situations where people come together and save, and one person ought to end up running with the money. So we have to build the confidence of the public and encourage them that please go ahead and save. Your savings are protected. We as the authority that is mandated to supervise and regulate the self-help groups, we are watching, we are tracking the progress. And there is punishment when somebody runs off with the group's money. Then secondly, we want transparency and accountability. Still, how are you handling members' savings? You know, are they aware of the enterprises, the businesses that the group is getting into? Are they consenting to the businesses that the group is getting into? Are they consenting to the interest? Things like that. And we have to protect the interests of the members themselves, the interests of the members, of the public. Basically, we are looking at developing these groups. They should not only stop at being self-help groups. We have a bigger picture for them. From being self-help groups, they can become SACCOs, they can become microfinance institutions, and eventually they could become banks.
So you want to see, you're looking at the bigger picture in there?
Yeah.
All right. Before the guidelines, before we actually look at these guidelines, I would wish to also understand, with the engagements you've had with most of these self-help groups, how have they bought the idea?
Well, they are welcoming it.
Okay.
That is number one, because they have been faced with the challenge of individuals running off with their monies, you know.
Okay.
They have complaints, they have nowhere to run to. So we've moved the entire Uganda, we've engaged with different groups from different regions of the country, and they have welcomed this idea of the guidelines. They have even participated in the formation of the guidelines.
Oh, okay. And when are these guidelines taking center stage? When are they taking effect?
Well, the guidelines were issued a week ago, but they will take effect on 1st January 2023.
Okay. And before we even look at the provisions, I would wish to understand, how do you intend first to implement these particular guidelines?
So when it comes to the time of implementation, number one, we want to translate these guidelines into different languages.
Okay.
If you may agree with me, most of the people that do the savings come from our local communities.
Yes.
Many are not conversant with the English language.
Very
so
true.
we are going to translate these guidelines into 4 languages, which we believe that will be able to cover, cover all the tribes in the country. And then we are going to conduct what we call a dissemination exercise. Dissemination exercise means we're going to, number one, we're going to move again, we're going to go back to the communities where we were, or probably where we may not have reached, and then teach, inform these people about the guidelines, tell them how the guidelines are going to operate, and then we are going to train trainers, people who will be able to move from group to group, teaching and training members of self-help groups about the guidelines. We are going to use media platforms like this one to engage the public and talk to them about these guidelines.
And what would be the key provisions of the guidelines that you've already set out there?
All right. The guidelines has several provisions. For example, how is a self-help group formed? Number one, it must be by consent of the members. And there must be something that is bringing the members of the groups together, all right? There must be social cohesion, people you agree with. There must be an element of trust, because for people to come together and save their monies, you do not trust your enemy, do you?
No.
Meaning you can't get into a
that you don't trust at
that
all,
you don't trust. So we have stages of group formation, and then we have principles for the self-help groups. These are internationally recognized principles of self-help groups. For example, independence. We try as much as possible. Self-help groups are independent, they are member funded, every resolution is member made, but at certain instances we can have different promotions coming in to support these groups. For example, government, NGOs may come in, the regulators also come in, but we have to keep our hands off up to a certain extent, so that these the groups, through their annual general meeting, which is the meeting of the members, make their own decisions on how to run their affairs. Other principles include a time-bound audit. What do we mean by this? It means that a group will decide when do they share out their profit. Some people could do it quarterly, others biannually, others could do it yearly. Or like the accumulated savings groups, the ones I talked about, the askers. They may decide to accumulate their money for a period, probably 5 years. We are saving for 5 years, and then after 5 years,
they will share.
We can share out. And then we also have ring-fenced group transactions.
How about those ones?
These ones members of self-help groups do not lend to outsiders. They lend amongst
each other.
So their transactions are ring-fenced. And then we talk about the size, the composition of the group. The minimum number of members is 10. And the maximum number is 30.
Do you look at the formation of these particular self-help groups? What entails the entire formation? Is it just someone from my neighbor sets up this group and I'm like, I want to join them? Or are there some key guidelines that have been managing, that have actually been regulating them before?
No. It is basically people coming together and agreeing to form a group. And we are not interrupting that.
All right.
Yeah, you come together because of a reason. There is some form of cohesion. There is something that is bringing you together.
Yes.
If you are market vendors, then you're coming together to save and, lend to each other. When someone wants to buy tomatoes, on wholesale price, they can come to your group and borrow some money and buy and bring back something of that kind. So I'm still talking of what is entailed in the guidelines. We talk about the size, which the minimum is 10 and maximum number of people is 30. Why are we giving the minimum as 10? The group is required to have committees.
Okay.
So if we have a minimum of 10, then most likely composition of committees. I mean, if you have a composition of less than 10, then the committees may not properly be made up. We talk about the role of the chairperson of the self-help group, the role of the secretary, the treasurer, the money counters. Well, in the cities, it is a bit different. We have groups that are having digital accounts. Others have opened up accounts in banks, in microfinance institutions and circles. But most of the groups in the rural areas have their accounts in boxes. They keep the money in the boxes, and the treasurer is in charge of the box. So on the day of the meeting, they bring out the money. They have what is called the money counters. They bring out the money, they count their money, put it back in the box, and then keep. So we are also defining the roles of these people, the money counters, the treasurer, things like that. We have also provided for financial linkages. Linkages to formal financial institutions. Like I told you, we do not want to leave the group as it is. No, the group we want to support these groups to develop and be sustainable. So we are we've provided a tool that is going to link them to formal financial institutions, for example, banks where they can open up accounts, borrow money, circles, or microfinance institutions.
Okay. And I will wish to also get to understand more with the issue to do with the committee composition. If a team is of 10 people, entirely you're going to realize that it will all be a committee, if I'm not mistaken. It will look like we have 5 members, or 6 of them as a committee. Would you advise someone to choose a group of 10, or you would wish them to go for more numbers?
Well, the more the better.
Okay.
The more the better, but at least the minimum should be 10.
All right.
Yeah.
And let's now look at community-based savings here. We are having challenges in the fact that sometimes you get to realize the reason as to why some of the communities have only women setting up these help groups is because men have issues to do with security matters. At the end of the day, someone will come and save with you, or at least come and get some money, acquire a loan, and then some of the interactions I've got with someone in these groups will tell you some men don't pay. How are you going to help such groups in terms of security of their savings?
Like I informed you earlier that self-help groups are member-based and member-governed. Okay?
Yes.
Well, as a matter of fact, women have been found to be more trustworthy than the men, and they are more committed when it comes to financial discipline than the men. So at the end of the day, it is the groups through their constitution, because a group is required to have a constitution. So it is the groups through their constitutions that should determine who to admit and who not to admit. We as the regulator, we cannot come up and tell them, don't admit this kind of person, please admit this. But like I told you, they come together for a reason. There must be something that is binding them together. We cannot interfere with, member vetting. That is left to the group to manage. Even then, in case such instances come in whereby members are not paying up, the constitution of the group must specifically stipulate what happens in case of default. Okay? And this constitution is by agreement of the members of the self-help group.
Okay, now let's look at the terms of registration. Registration of these groups, for example, under the regulations of Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority. What is the step forward? What is needed from these groups?
Number one, they must have they must have a constitution
that governs them.
Okay. Or bylaws. Then they should have a recommendation letter from their LC1 area where they operate. Then there is need to have a register of their members, the ones that form up the group. Then we need to know who the governing committee of this group, who is a member of this governing committee.
Okay.
And then we shall have their national IDs and passport photos, basically, for the governing committee. But what I want to make clear is that when it comes to registration, registration is done at the district. It is not done with Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority.
All right.
Under the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act, there is created the office of the DCDO, the District Community Development Officer. This one is responsible for registering the self-help groups. And the self-help groups are required to annually file reports to the DCDO's office. And when they do the registration and the filing of these reports, now the DCDO forwards them to Umra. Maybe something that I can also talk about is that by virtue of the law and the guidelines, Umra is creating a national-wide database for self-help groups. This is going to help us track their progress, you know, and be able to come up with intervention programs that help these groups to develop.
And if at all you found a group that has already been operating more organized than you expected, maybe you have 15 or 20,
they are there.
How easy is it to at least have these ones encrypted already into the new system that you want to bring up?
That is going to be very easy because such very, the organized groups, you know, have all the requirements. They have the constitution, you know, they have the register of their members, share out reports. So that is like a walkover, really. So, yeah.
All right. And now let's as well look at the penalties of any person who is going to offend any guideline in here. Do we have, because I believe Ugandans always have their
the
own
stubborn
way,
ones,
of breaking rules and regulations. How are you going to deal with these ones who are actually offensive in a way?
Well, the guidelines do not provide for penalties. Penalties are a creature of statute. And the penalties are included in the Mother Act, the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act. And they create offenses for not following the provisions of the Act. And the fact that the guidelines are a provision of the Act, anybody who contravenes can be charged under the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act.
So for now the guidelines are not offering that?
No, guidelines do not create offenses. Offenses are a creature of statute. They are created by a law that is passed by Parliament.
You've set January as the implementation date, or we should say when you start implementing the guidelines. Do you have a month that you say that we're only going to do this for 1, 2, 3, 4 months, or it is something that is going to be continuous?
This is a continuous process. And the guidelines are subject to amendment at any time. You know, we might go into the implementation stage and find that some of the things we had hoped or envisaged would be applicable are not practicable. So we can come back, sit and amend.
These particular
guidelines.
All right. And if you're just joining us here, we are still looking at this particular issue to do with operational guidelines for self-help groups. Just for you to at least get to understand more of what these self-help groups are, we've been breaking them down. My guest Sheila has broken these particular ones into a group of 7, because we've had village savings and loan associations, that is the VISLAs, then the silks, that is saving and internal lending communities, then we have the rotating savings and credit associations, the accumulated savings and credit associations, farmer field schools, then we've had others that are defined under section 99 of the Tier 4. So these particular regulations will be taking center stage as of January next year. So this is a move that is entirely to at least regulate the microfinance and other sectors in there. Well, if we are to look at the issue to do it now, besides the self-help groups, the other sectors, the microfinance chain, look at the SACCOs, what next for some of these ones? Because if you look at this is going to create a growth for these ones to tap into the other sectors. Where does it leave the others?
Well, like I told you, we do license, supervise and regulate SACCOs, non-deposit taking institutions and the money lenders. So already in place we have the Tier 4 microfinance institutions, in brackets SACCO regulations that came out in 2020, around October 2020, and Umra has already started the process of licensing SACCOs. By the way, let me make a call out to the SACCOs, people operating SACCO business out there. I'm informing you that there is a regulator in place. Come to Umra in case you need to find out any more information, because operating financial business under a SACCO is an offense if you are not licensed by Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority. Yes, we also have intervention programs for the SACCOs. For example, the law gives us the mandate to operate a SACCO Savings Protection Fund. This is basically a fund that protects the savings of members. We've had instances where, just like the self-help groups, people have run off with members' savings. But in the event that this happens, the Umra is mandated to operate a backup for members' savings to a certain percentage. And then we are going to operate a SACCO stabilization fund. Under this fund, this is where we shall be getting monies to inject in those SACCOs that we see are genuinely failing. They are operating, but they are failing. This is also going to be a fund where SACCOs can come and borrow to reinvest in their businesses. So there is a lot. We have several programs for the SACCOs. Still, we are going around the entire country, educating the public and telling them about the law and telling them about the SACCO and the good things that Umra has for the SACCO industry.
Okay, and just to take you back a little bit, you did mention that these particular self-help groups will only register at district level. So at the district level, will they expect them to still carry the constitution like you mentioned, or they will only have a representative who will go in there to just register?
Well, at the district level, you do not have to move the whole of you, the 30 members, no? Just one or two. You can go with the copy of the constitution and then the group registered. Probably the DCDO may require to verify the membership of these groups, because we've had instances where we have multiple memberships that are redundant. You find someone is belonging to 5 groups, but in actual sense is serving in only one.
The others is there to give advice, maybe.
Well, of course, I can't say I can't deny that, but what brings together these people is an element of saving.
Very true.
So whereas you're giving advice, you must also do saving. And now we are limiting the membership, that it should be between 10 and 30. So you are going to occupy space that somebody else would have occupied. Yeah, so if the DCDO requires to verify the membership, probably he can require the members to come, or he can move down to where the members are.
So that means there's an opportunity for me to, if I have the money to save, I can save in 4 or 5 groups.
So long as you're active.
So the issue is being active, not only being in the group to be recognized as a member who is not saving. All right, Sheila, now in 3 minutes, I would want you to give us your parting shots, but in your parting shots, to give us more of an overview of how the sector has been performing, and then you give us more of the prospects that Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority is setting ahead of the next few years.
All right. Umra came into place in 2017 after the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Moneylenders Act was passed in 2016. As we speak now, we have licensed over 1,000 institutions, Tier 4 microfinance institutions. This is inclusive of money lenders, inclusive of SACCOs, and inclusive of non-deposit taking microfinance institutions. We have consumer protection guidelines that are there to protect the beneficiaries of the services of the Tier 4 microfinance institutions. We have created some bit of sanity in the sector. If you may agree with me, before Umra coming into play, we all had, every time we turned on our TVs to watch news, there were stations of money lenders. I mean, there were clips and instances of money lenders running after people, taking their, property unlawfully. But since Umra came into place, there has been a very, very big reduction in such practices. Why? Because we are regulating these money lenders and other institutions. They have guidelines to follow. There are laws. We have Tier 4 microfinance institutions, in brackets, money lenders regulations of 2018. We have the Tier 4 microfinance institutions and brackets, non-deposit taking microfinance institutions regulations of 2018. Okay. So these money lenders that we license, we follow them up to ensure that when they are renewing their licenses, the license is renewed only on ground that they have been compliant with the provisions of the law. So they try to tread carefully because they know the consequences. When we issue a license, it is a calendar year license. It operates from 1st January to 31st December, meaning that every year the institution has to come back to renew its licenses. And we only renew the licenses on condition that we are satisfied that this money lender has been compliant with the law. Okay. Maybe you can ask, how do we find out that the money lender has not been compliant? Exactly. We have several mechanisms, but one of them, we have a complaints handling committee where Umra receives complaints from the public against different institutions, money lenders, SACCOs, non-deposit taking microfinance institutions. So from our statistics, we can tell, and from the complaint log, we can tell how the institutions are performing. That's just one of them. We require them to make reports, to submit reports, annual reports, quarterly reports, by annual reports. So it is easy for us to follow up. And then our future prospects. I can say we are digitizing the regulation of these Tier 4 microfinance institutions. We're in the process of obtaining a microfinance information system that will help us do proper monitoring and following up. So it will be flagging different areas of non-compliance. Yes. All right.
And many thanks for joining us again. This is Sheila Birungi, who is the head legal at the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority. So we were pretty much looking at the operational guidelines that were issued by the regulator. These particular ones will be going to the self-help groups, and it will take effect next year, January. That is the first month of the year. I'm Joram Paul Sonko here. After the break, I will be returning with the SMB on ground to understand what is happening at the Uganda the Uganda Manufacturers Association grounds in Lugogo with the expo which is taking place. Stick around. This is SMB.